Hi, everyone. My name is Alon. I'm one of the founders at the SSV core team. Anyone familiar with DVT, distributed validated tech? One, two, not as much. So I'll maybe give another brief on that as well. So distributed validated technology is a new, or rather not new, but recently new technology. Started out life at the Ethereum Foundation with the goal of being able to distribute the control of an Ethereum validator. Anyone staking here, by the way, on Ethereum? One? No, not as much. And so the idea was to take an Ethereum validator, which was represented by a private key, and being able to distribute that into multiple operators, with the idea that you can decentralize the entire Ethereum ecosystem if you kind of create this new component. And so SSV is one of the first implementers. We've been developing it for 2.5 years and been launched on mainnet just a month and a half ago. The core challenges we're trying to kind of solve and mitigate is the centralization on Ethereum. Most of the stake on Ethereum, because of the how stake on Ethereum works and the difficulties in staking, is mostly centralized and kind of compressed into 5 or more or so entities controlling the vast majority of stake. That obviously creates challenges. The significant challenges are obviously that Ethereum wants to be as decentralized as possible, and being basically controlled by those 5 or 6 entities is problematic. But it also creates a lot of risk. So it's both risk on the users using those services, but also there's a major systemic risk on Ethereum itself, because the way slashing on Ethereum works. If one of those entities gets hacked or something happens to it, the fallout or the implications on the entire Ethereum ecosystem are pretty large. And so centralization is a major issue or major challenge that the entire ecosystem needs to address, and DVT is one of the major forces that can help with that. It also doesn't help that the current tech stack or the way to do staking on Ethereum is pretty complex. You have multiple different softwares you need to run. It's very difficult to run them and make sure they're scalable and robust, but also it kind of creates single points of failure. So it's not just very expensive to run, it's also very difficult, and so it kind of increases the challenges around centralization in general, and also obviously maintenance and all of those different factors. So the technology itself and the way it's built right now, it's pretty challenging to run on thousands and thousands of node operators, and so that's why we're seeing that this centralization issues arise. And also, if you're developing an actual service or application for staking, there's a bunch of different things you need to develop and build, which is kind of reinventing the wheel every time you want to build an application. Everything from the infrastructure all the way to the operator set, key management, settlement, all of those types of things are common for each staking application out there. And each one of them needs to kind of reinvent the wheel every time they want to build it. And so all of those 3 factors are pretty significant in kind of forcing everything to be centralized, and that creates a lot of issues. And that's where kind of DVT tries to come into play. DVT, as kind of I mentioned before, is a distributed validated technology. The idea is that you can take an Ethereum validator and split it up into independent operators. And DVT really has 3 focuses. So one is to be a decentralized infrastructure. Another one is to be easy to use and scalable. And if we can get all 3 of those challenges solved, or at least mitigated by DVT, we can make sure that Ethereum kind of goes into the path of decentralization and makes sure it's more robust and so on. DVT in of itself is pretty simple. It's comprised of 2 different technologies, so a consensus protocol and threshold signatures. The simple idea is that you have independent node operators. They coordinate with one another and then sign using threshold signatures. It's pretty easy and pretty bulletproof in terms of the technology itself, but it offers a lot of benefits, amongst which fault tolerance. So you can imagine if one of those operators gets hacked or is offline, the others can continue working as if nothing happened, and obviously that's a major advancement. We at SSV, what we took this DVT technology and we made a network out of it. The idea there is that you have a lot of node operators interconnected on a network, and they all controlled and synchronized by a smart contract. That smart contract basically decides which validators run on which operators. A group of operators that run a validator is called a cluster. So each validator can be run on a cluster, and that cluster can be of different sizes, 4 operators, 7 operators, and so on and so forth. And it's super, super easy to run a distributed validator. Again, because it's a smart contract, all you need to do is really, it's a simple Ethereum transaction. And so that was the goal of SSV, and we kind of build on top of it the various things that a developer needs to build in order to kind of launch their staking service. And so we are doing advanced key management, like distributed key generation. You can actually create a validator in a distributed way. So there's no single point where the actual validator key exists. And so if it doesn't exist in a single point, it's very hard to attack and cause any harm. Because it's a smart contract-driven system, it's super easy to interact with. So you can even launch a distributed validator using a simple web app. And I'll show you how that looks like. But it's super, super easy. So if we are trying to decentralize Ethereum and making it easy and scalable, that's a big step forward for developers everywhere, basically. We launched about a month and a half ago. We're still in the launch phase, which is not fully permissionless. It will be permissionless next month. But with our launch partners, about a month and a half ago, we've launched, and we already see 40,000 ETH coming and staking and staked via SSV. Performance is amazing, is as good as traditional tech stack, and even better. Obviously, it's a worldwide network. So it's a global network of node operators on different continents, different data centers, and all of that really is a step forward for Ethereum. And what I wanted to show really quickly is, the traditional way of running a validator on Ethereum is pretty challenging. So you need to, spin up your own infrastructure. You need to run several different softwares. You need to make sure you have monitoring in place. You need to have all of those bits and bytes in place in order to run the validator. Make sure it's backed up. Make sure you can reboot it if needed. But with SSV or a DVT network, again, it's simple, easy, because you already have a network of those operators, right? And so you can go into a web app, a super simple web app, and select a few of the operators you want to use. It's as simple as that. Just select the operators. You can select really high-profile operators. You can select cheap operators. You can mix and match. You can select 4 or 7 or whatever the group size you want. And once you select them, you can actually just upload some fee into the contract, decide how long you want that validator to run, in this case for a year, for example. And from that moment on, you can just create your validator in various ways. You can create the key on your own. You can create it on a DKG. You can have an existing validator transferred into SSV. You can create a new one. But as long as that key is uploaded, the encrypted key is uploaded, encrypted shares rather, uploaded into the contract, and each one of those keys is encrypted for a specific operator. None of the operators have the full key, obviously. And so once you do that and you actually execute a transaction, that's it. Your validator starts to run, completely distributed. You don't need to run any hardware. You don't need to do anything else but register that validator. And ultimately, you also get a cool web app showing all of the validators you have, the status, which operators are running them, and so on and so forth. And so think about the application, not just as a solo staker that wants to run a few validators. Think of a developer that now wants to build a staking pool, for example, right? So instead of worried about the infrastructure, the operators, like all of those different things, it can use something like SSV as its infrastructure and focus on the actual application they want to develop, and it runs beautifully. It's much cheaper, it's much faster, and most of all, it's decentralized, which means that it's more robust and better for the entire Ethereum ecosystem. And so, yeah, that's DVT in a few words. I don't know if anyone's staking here, but Ethereum staking is becoming huge. I mean, Ethereum staking today has over 1 million validators. That means 32 million ETH are at stake today. And so you can imagine the big market, and it's only growing. at a pretty significant pace. Ethereum staking is bound to be the largest application for Ethereum by size. And so making sure that it's built the right way is crucial for Ethereum, because otherwise it will put the entire Ethereum ecosystem at risk. And so DVT is kind of one of the emerging technologies to combat centralization and make sure we're building something which is robust enough for the Ethereum ecosystem. Thank you. And if anyone has questions. Yep.
How this will help to decentralize what is already centralized. Like, I mean, Coinbase is obviously not going to shut down their own nodes and restake with SSV. So there will still be like a major chunk of validation on Ethereum. So
yeah, that's a really good question. So. DVT is something that kind of interests a lot of people in different places. And so Coinbase is obviously not the early adopter of that, but I can tell you that Lido is. And Lido is the biggest staking pool by far. Lido today holds close to 400,000 validators. So it's millions and millions of ETH at stake. And they are the most aggressive player to adopt DVT anywhere. They just announced their first step of adoption, which is simple DVT. And so my kind of, projecting forward, you'll get to those early adopters, and I believe that DVT will take 10 to 20% of the entire Ethereum stake in the next, let's say, 18 months. And then ultimately you'll get to Coinbase as well. Coinbase are not early adopters, but once Coinbase adopts something, that means that it's already there to stay, right? I mean, you can look at their adoption for L2s, right? It took them a few years to adopt L2s, but once they adopted it or started to adopt it, they put a lot of focus on it. And so it's a gradual adoption, but I would imagine that 10 to 20% in 18 months and probably 50% in like maybe 4 years. So it's pretty significant. Yeah.
Another question. Let's say centralization of hardware, because we know that most of those nodes will be run on Amazon and stuff like that. So physical hardware will stay centralized, and if Amazon shuts down, it will shut down like huge chunk of Ethereum validators. And I don't see like that DVT tech addresses this problem. It actually, I think, makes it even worse, because it disincentivizes people from making their own nodes on RockPi or something like this at home, because you can now do it with DVT.
So I think there's several layers that you need to address. One is the very basic is where the validator sits, right? So currently you have 5 entities controlling more than 2/3 of the validators. So that's kind of level 1. Level 2 is client diversity, like what software you're using. Layer 3 is your VPS. Layer 4 is your regional regulatory area. Level 5 is the identity. There's a bunch of different layers. What I would say is that DVT doesn't solve everything, but DVT enables it to be solved. The reason why is that today is very hard to do. Like if you are, let's say you said you're Coinbase, right? Coinbase will have very difficult to kind of distribute their access and control, because they're one entity. They can use multiple data centers, but they're still one entity. There's not Coinbase 1, 2, 3, and 4 completely separated. It's one entity. And with DVT, you can still have Coinbase, but you can mix it in the same cluster, the same group, as solo stakers and other operators. And so by doing that, you're mitigating a lot of the risk. I agree. There's if we go to the to the dream case scenario where every validator is run by a single entity in a hardware in their own home or own office. That's a dream. I don't think it will happen. But the question is, how far can we get to that dream? Currently, we're as far as we can from that dream. I believe that with DVT and the things we've been working on towards 2024, you'll see that needle coming into much closer to that dream scenario. You need to mix and match technology like DVT. You need to mix and match economics, operator marketplaces, and stuff like that. But I think you can move the needle pretty significantly, at least to the point where not one single entity can take down Ethereum even for an hour, right? And so,
Amazon can, and that's what I'm saying. Like,
I completely agree.
even with SSV network, Amazon will be able to shut down Ethereum.
Definitely, but currently, like, that's level 4 or 5, right?
Yeah.
We currently don't even need Amazon. Like today, literally today, the US regulators can go to 3 or 4 players and say, please censor all transactions from that area, that place. Like, it's much simpler than taking down Amazon. So what I'm saying is that DVT can enable all of that. It's not just DVT, it's also adoption in terms of the way you use it, how people are using it. And so what I'm saying is that with the right economics, right discovery of operators, and technology like DVT, you can move the needle much closer to where you're talking about and where I want to be as well, instead of the place it's right now. It's an enabler. It's not like if you don't use it correctly, nothing will help. But currently, in the way you use technology, none of it is possible because of the way the current legacy technology works.
And okay, last one, hardware requirements for SSV nodes.
Super simple. I think a node on SSV can run on 2 cores. It's super easy.
Okay, so I still can run it on my
Oh yeah, we have a bunch of nodes running on DApp nodes on Avado. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's like those boxes where you buy it to your home. Like I think it's
like RockPi and stuff. Like, okay, thank you.
Yeah, I was just curious about like when there's a new network, there's often a new token, and that often makes sense. For this though, given the network's sort of based on staking of Ethereum, is it a security concern that token is like not Ethereum or is that it is a separate?
So one of the things we're planning for 2024 is have a separation between the DAO, which develops this whole thing, and the underlying technology. If you get to that place, the role of the DAO will be to develop. The DAO will be, financially stable to do that, like the Ethereum Foundation. But the technology is not dependent on that. And so the idea is that you can take that technology and reduce the token value to 0, but it's still going to work, okay? Or eliminate the token, if you will. And so yeah, that's part of the planning. I think the token, where it comes to play, is the community itself. So ultimately, if you want to have a public good type of software, you need money to run it. And so I think that's where adoption, token, and technology come into play. The idea is for that to be public good. It's completely open software, completely DAO controlled. I mean, the DAO, the SSV DAO currently is financing the actual development, so it can choose whoever it wants to develop it. We have planning for multiple clients of SSV, so the idea is that you're not even dependent on one client, one team or so. And so yeah, that's definitely in the cards.
Hey, yeah, so I was watching the map a couple of slides ago, and I was wondering, because probably one of the things you mentioned was that like currently the US can just go censor a couple of actors, and then you can have a big part of your operators go down. What challenges do you see in trying to get more operators, like node operators, in different countries, like in South America or in Africa or in parts of Asia that you're not currently getting at? What do you see are the challenges to getting operators on those areas?
I think the emerging trend I see right now with the biggest open source protocols on staking is bonded operators. The idea that you have an operator which is bonded by some collateral, right? And I think that's the economical basis for opening it up to everyone. The problem is, two problems. One is how do you get the money to be bonded? And the second part is economical inefficiencies. You see it very well on Rocket Pool, for example, where Rocket Pool is the de facto kind of reference implementation for bonded operators. The problem they have is they don't have enough operators. Like if you go to their deposit queue right now, they have 100% full deposit queue, which I think it's like, I don't know if I can access that, but I think it's like 20,000 ETH or something, which they cannot deposit to be validators because they simply don't have enough operators, bonded operators. And so one of the things we're thinking about is how can you solve that economical inefficiencies. From the one hand, there's a lot of people who want to be operators, solo operators, but they don't have enough capital. And so the way we're thinking about it in 2024 is maybe use restaking for that purpose. So the idea is that you have somebody with capital and you have somebody with hardware, and there's some software in the middle which makes the two marry. Obviously, there's a bunch of trust assumptions there, but the idea is that if you can marry that, you might create an open marketplace for solo operators, which basically is economical both for the risk-taking side, but also the operator side. And that can significantly increase the amount of solo operators. And so I think bonded operators will represent probably 30 to 40% of the entire Ethereum stake. The rest of the 60% is probably institutional staking like Coinbase and others. Yeah.
All right, do we have further questions? No. All right.
Thank you, everyone.
Alon, thank you so much for coming. And you're here for a few days in Prague?
I'll be here until tomorrow, yeah.
All right, so if we have further questions. Thank you.